let's get back to some boring subjects.
Understand the risk to our country.
Freedom brings people together.
You're listening to the We Are Libertarians Network. Learn more at wearelibertarians.com.
Welcome to We Are Libertarians. My name is Chris Spangle. It is so nice to see you tonight, or hear me. You hear me.
Oh, yeah. Hey, Chris.
Hi, Gault. We're going to talk about Game of Thrones and what does power mean, and talk a little bit about political power and where it's derived from, and a whole lot of nerd talk about Game of Thrones. So, not going to lie, it's not relevant to you if you don't know the show, haven't caught up on the show. It's
Spoilers ahead.
Not for you, so be aware. So we'll be back right after this.
Warning, this show is for adults, produced by semi-adults. So the language is sometimes strong and offensive.
I don't know what I said.
Welcome to We Are Libertarians, where our goal is to help you sound smarter while talking to your friends. We examine current events from a libertarian perspective while treating modern politics with all of the irreverence it deserves.
There has been lie after lie.
We toss out the screaming heads, put people before political parties, and give context to the news to make you think. Now, here's our host, a 15-year veteran of politics and media, Chris Spangle.
All right, welcome back. This is Chris Spangle with the music incredibly loud. Ironically, the one person in the room without headphones is my coworker on radio. Jess Alsman, how are you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
So nice to see your face. Saw you yesterday. I was like, I can't have a Game of Thrones episode without the resident nerd at the day job.
I would have been bitter.
You would have been mad at me, and
Yeah.
I share an office with you, so I'm not taking any chances.
Yeah.
Also, here is one of the OGs from episode 1 through 39-ish.
Go.
Chris Gault.
I'm here.
Chris Gault is here. He is feisty as ever. He's going to piss you off. He's where he and I are probably going to Android, iPhone argue. You know, maybe some of that later in the show.
Let's do it.
Wait, am I going to have to fight him?
Yes, please.
Android.
That is Todd
That
Singer.
would make it more interesting and blow the show up.
Todd Singer. Todd, I don't know. Have you ever been on the show?
I have not. Although
Okay.
I have done a podcast in this apartment before.
You have, yeah.
Sorry, in the studio before.
Do you still do that podcast?
No, it's defunct. It's on hiatus.
Okay. Well, that means it's never coming back.
It's never coming back.
I have one of those.
Yeah, never not. What is
Nearly
it?
total nonsense.
Nearly total
with
nonsense.
Christopher Peppers.
Yeah, who's in God knows where.
We did a couple episodes. It was pretty good.
You got a defunct podcast too, Jess?
Well, we tried.
Yep.
We tried.
Right.
Yeah.
So everybody's got a defunct podcast. Mine's the Chris Spangle Show, and some would say we are libertarians, to be quite honest with you, depending on who you talk to. Todd Singer is the man who hired me at the Libertarian Party of Indiana and completely changed the trajectory of my life. It was the wisest decision you've ever made, isn't it?
It was made at
More
the,
so than your wife. Go ahead, say it.
Cracker Barrel in Plainfield. it's the best hire I've ever made personally.
Yeah, that's very kind. I do have a gun to his head. I made him say that. No, Todd was my boss for 6 months, 9 months?
Something like that. Yeah, my second kid came around, and I decided, hey, it's time to let somebody else. When Sam said, hey, I think I could do that. Like, hey, that sounds great to me. Sam's good people.
Sam Goldstein, currently on the LNC. He was my boss for the rest of my time at the Libertarian Party of Indiana. Great guy. You wouldn't say that if you know Sam, great guy. If you don't know Sam, total asshole, right?
That's so true.
Right. So and so last year, or 2016, actually, it's 2019. When Sam was in all this brouhaha of, they wouldn't let Ron Paul speak at the convention. Sam Goldstein wouldn't let him. Like, Sam hates a lot of people, but he's a very fair man. You're just making things up, Joshua Smith, and we know that he makes things up. So, So Todd, very, very good friend of mine, longtime listener and supporter of the show, Patreon supporter, and we're very happy to have you here. So thank you for A, being a Patreon supporter.
Welcome.
And B, do I owe you a poster?
I don't know.
All right. Well, there's probably a few of you that I do. I apologize. I hired someone to do the posters, and then they lost them. So we're reordering those.
My wife doesn't let me hang up posters. It's quite all right.
That's a big fail.
It is.
Did you demote her?
Yes,
Spanker?
I fired her.
Oh.
She now works in New York City.
Wow.
She's a Democrat.
That's
Fail
a
up.
that's a
Oh, wow.
downgrade.
No. It was not her
So
fault.
she left you. It was a breakup.
It was. No, it wasn't a breakup. We never had romantic relations.
A podcast breakup.
Yeah, speaking
left
of
the
that,
show.
last time Alsman was here, I lost 2 co-hosts.
I witnessed the beginning of the end, and I didn't realize it. I'm sorry. What would I have done, though? Said, hey, you guys, this isn't a good idea.
Yeah, it's a,
Or it's a great idea. I don't know.
it's a great idea.
I'm not involved.
They're
I didn't
still
mean to have an
happily
opinion.
together. We're
Great.
happy for them. Yeah, great idea.
They made a great choice to pursue other things. Let's change the subject.
Jess-
Game of Thrones.
Just as we both work for the Bob and Tom show, which we normally don't talk about Game of Thrones, or we don't talk about my day job, but it's a comedy radio show. She's the resident geek on the show. She does a series. You should go subscribe to the YouTube channel, Bob and Tom Show. You can see every Friday. She's in the Week in Review. I produce it along with our friend Grace Singer. And she does a series called Overthinking with Jess Alsman. We've only done 2. We've been meaning to do more, but she overthinks it.
I'm too busy overthinking them.
Right.
I've got a lot to do, though. A lot of them are just lined up, ready to roll out. So get ready, Spangle.
What's on the top 3, would you say?
Ooh, overthinking your Indy 500 fashion.
Okay.
That only works for this week, though, with the race.
get
We'll never get
coming
it.
up.
We'll never
Sorry.
get it done in time.
Okay. Overthinking your menstrual cycle for men. Not to ever say, how guys are like, what are you on your period? Worst thing you can say to a girl. So it's basically overthinking that altogether and explaining what you should do instead, like the signs to look for.
I apologize for saying that to you last week.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
possible that
Was I the inspiration for that particular one?
A lot of guys in that building are.
it's possible I might know someone who puts his wife's cycle on his personal calendar just as a reminder.
Just hide.
You know what, though? It's
Is
okay
that
as
why you're
long
here?
as they don't say it.
No, it's not.
You just can't say it like, oh, it's a full moon. I know what that is. This is the 28 days
It's
or
no-
29 days. Or...
Yeah, so, and we're here to educate men.
Yes.
I will say it jokingly, but it's demeaning. That's why like guys will say like, "Oh, you're just hormonal because you're not a girl." Like it's like, why is it annoying to women?
Because it's just an excuse for them to say, no matter what you say right now, you're not being rational, so I don't have to listen.
Right.
Like, I don't care if I don't know how to load the dishwasher. You're just irrational right now.
Right.
Because your uterus is shedding its lining.
It's them copping out.
Right.
Right. It's sort of like calling someone a crazy bee. It's like, oh, you're just crazy. It's like sort of the same. It hits the same note. Would you
Right.
say? Right.
And usually
you
I am
did
on.
that.
Yeah.
I've
This week.
I was joking with her. Because
Was
we
it funny? Did she laugh?
I don't know. Did you?
I think I was like, no, it's PMDD. You want to
So-
talk about it? And that's a whole other thing besides PMS.
Yeah, I've had like 6 jobs, and they all make you take sexual harassment training.
Oh, we had to
And
take
it's
it.
literally
Wait a minute,
very
are you
clearly in there
sure?
says.
If it's 6 different places I'm having you do sexual harassment training, I don't know if you can make that connection for sure.
No, Jess and I share an office, and most of the day is her just yelling in my direction. Not at me, just yelling. I mean, just,
Or talking, and then I'm like, are you listening? Because he'll have his headphones
my,
on.
my job is audio and video editing, and if I don't have my headphones on, then I'm never going to get anything done.
So you're never really listening. You're always just nodding your head.
And
yes.
it's not Jess.
You're
is-
right.
a-
Yes.
Yep.
and Jess is the least of the problems. I mean, you vouch for me. My office is Grand Central Station where we work.
It is. People seem to just migrate there naturally.
Right. Because you and I are there. We're the fun people that work there. Everybody else is boring. And that's not true.
We're the only ones here, so we can say it's true. but
Right. Exactly.
It's not true.
And so everybody kind of ends up in my office, and literally, like, from the time I get in there between 9 or 10 until the time I leave, it's just one person after another. And I just looked at my boss today, and I go, I got some thinking that I got to do. I might not come in this week. And he goes, I totally get it. Because you have a hideaway office somewhere else. He has a hideaway office somewhere else. It's like, I don't know. It's a very social workplace, like any radio station is. And, you know, it's just sort of, at a certain point, I got to get stuff done. I'm very efficient, am I not?
You are. It's
So you
amazing.
need a hideaway office.
I do, yeah.
So?
Well, this is kind of my hideaway office, yeah.
But they let you come home and work from home.
Yeah.
Oh,
we
nice.
have like the best bosses in the world. And I'm not just saying that because we're on tape. I mean, would you agree with me?
Yeah, if you're getting your job done, that's all that matters.
Yeah.
And you can do it anywhere, kind of,
Yeah.
most of the time. So,
Mhm. Yeah, a lot of my production I have to do at work, but the emails I can answer from the sunny back porch.
Nice.
So yeah,
We're
so
on the
it's,
beach in Florida.
yeah, it's very nice. But yeah, I have a lot of projects going, and I got a lot that I got to get done in the day, and so I apologize if I ever ignored you, Jess.
No, it makes me mad when you're extremely efficient knocking things off your to-do list. I'm like, that's not fair. I'm not knocking things off. Pay attention to me.
Sorry, I didn't mean to be focused.
No, it's okay.
I'm the only focused person that has ever worked in the radio industry. It's really annoying to everybody, I think.
It's beneficial. If you ignore me, I eventually just go away. I'm like a cat.
Right. She does. And then I feel bad because I realized why she's leaving. I ignored her. And then I'm like, oh, Jess, come back. I'm so sorry.
I'm like, no, I got the hint, and you're right. You were absolutely right. I'm going to go do my job now.
I try not to ignore you. Sometimes I get into the zone, and then I can't get out of it.
That's okay. I turn to you for politics, though.
That's right.
So I can be a little dangerous talking
That's right.
with the friends and family.
That's right. That's what we do here. Gault.
Dangerous Speak. That's my middle name.
Yeah, Gault. Here's the funny thing about this show.
What's that?
The progenitor of Gault leaving was the fact that we would not let him talk about fluoride in the water and conspiracy theories in 2012. So this program started March 8th, 2012. That was when the first episode dropped. The first one was recorded late February because I didn't hit record.
Yeah,
It got
we
messed
had to
up.
do the first episode twice.
Yeah, and but if you go back and you listen to it, it's I think us talking about maybe Ron Paul versus Gary Johnson or something. I don't know. It started in early 2012 during the 2012 election. So we're about to do our third election cycle, which is crazy. Wow. And back in 2012, Todd, you didn't talk about conspiracy theories, especially if you were a libertarian.
Well, not around here. I didn't talk much about that. I was, being in Indiana, I was trying to be, straight-laced and talk about all of the fiscal aspects of things. And even if it was like marijuana, like, okay, well, let's frame that as a fiscal issue. How much money that we're spending on incarcerating and investigating and such and such.
Yeah, you hired me in 2008, October 2008, and it was almost a no pot discussion rule. I mean, we didn't talk about marijuana because a lot of that time period for libertarians was we don't want to be seen as crazy. We've gone through 35, 40 years of the guy in the Hawaiian shirt trying to be outrageous on the televised debate talking about marijuana, and it was such a punchline of pot and libertarians, but lo and behold, you look 10 years later and it's damn near legalized everywhere. Mm-hmm. And now he didn't talk about conspiracies because it was completely taboo. You would immediately get run out of the rails as a crazy person. And we now have a conspiracy theorist as a president. Mm-hmm. And the media is a conspiracy theorist about the president.
And you've apologized to that.
I actually have, yeah, because while I don't believe in conspiracy theories, I do believe that some older conspiracy theories like JFK and some of that stuff, I think that the Dulles brothers were the two most evil men to live, and so was LBJ. But like 9/11 truth, fluoride in the water, I'm sorry, I'm not down with all that stuff, but
I think there actually is fluoride in the water.
Oh, you don't understand the benefits of spring water?
no, I understand.
Fresh spring
I
water?
understand having good teeth, right?
Fresh spring water does not have fluoride in it.
Let's not beat this dead horse. Creighton is not here to punch you,
Which was my point. You have apologized for it.
but
I've still yet to hear from Creighton.
Creighton, you'll never get an apology from. First of all, Creighton has a big boy job in New York City with a very reputable firm.
And still doesn't talk about it.
And still he will never be back on the show because I just thought about it the other day. God, this show has been on so long that we now have people with great jobs in high places. And 20 years from now, I'll be like, I'm destitute. Can you hire me, Creighton? Remember me? No.
Can I clean your house?
Right. I know how to do toilets. But I think that the term conspiracy theorist, which is sort of what you were trying to say, is just a blanket term it's a propaganda term. It's like far right.
Yep.
It's anytime you see the media talking about far right commentator and then they mention Ben Shapiro and you're like, the dude couldn't be more mainstream conservative down the road, fair to the left. It's like it's a propagandist term, and so you can just label anybody a conspiracy theorist, and the point of the term is that this person is not fit to be in society, therefore it doesn't matter what happens to them.
And none of his other political opinions matter.
Right. It doesn't matter that Alex Jones, you've never seen 1 second, and I'm not defending on Alex Jones on this, but I am defending the charge against the media, okay?
Right.
Because if Alex Jones had ever said, I want you to show up at those parents' house and terrorize them, you would see that everywhere all the time. Have you ever, think about this, America, have you ever seen Alex Jones on video, which he broadcast every minute of his video free across the world, have you ever seen 1 second of him talking about Sandy Hook? Or saying go terrorize parents? No, you haven't, but you've heard he said some stuff about Sandy Hook, and he's a conspiracy theorist, and he denies that this happened. And it's sort of the same has happened with Gavin McInnes. Gavin McInnes, he started something called the Proud Boys, which was mostly what he calls a men's club, and it basically was just like a bunch of dudes getting together, forming like our Liberty and Chills, and it was based around chauvinism and Western culture, which basically just means we're going to just be a bunch of misogynistic dudes. And they decided to start fighting back against Antifa, who was shutting down conservative speakers, and then all of a sudden they're a terrorist organization, and he's a leader of a terrorist organization, and you just go, how many times have you ever listened to Gavin McInnes? But he's a leader of a terrorist cell. He's racist. He's all these different terms that you just use to move somebody out of out of public opinion, because you don't want to deal with what they say. And then Alex Jones gets banned from Facebook for having Gavin McInnes on his show off of Facebook. So he gets banned from Facebook for something he didn't do on the platform, and then if you bitch about it on the platform, you get banned. So the slippery slope, I'd like to point out, hey, remember when somebody 2.5 years ago, 2 years ago, maybe a year and a half ago at the least, was saying, this is a dangerous precedent. You don't want them going down this road because it's only going to get worse. We're at worse, and it's only going to get worse over time. You think next year they're going to just, you know what, free speech is good. We've changed our mind.
That's exactly why I wanted us to talk about it. I wanted us to look past the propaganda and just look at the issues for a second and not have to polarize things so much and label things.
Yeah. Even the term...
I was just woke back then in 2012, huh?
you hear the term deep state now in mainstream media pretty regularly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that was something in 2008 or whatever.
Right.
If you said that term, you're just completely written off.
Right. Totally. So it's funny to look back in the beginning. You'll go listen to the first 5 episodes and just kind of think about how much further down certain rabbit holes we are, how much, like the good thing about We Are Libertarians, you can go back and watch the sands of time. You go back and listen to all the episodes.
The show's not only helped the audience, it's helped you too.
Right.
You've grown.
I have grown. I started this show married. I'm no longer married. I started this show with you, and you're all I've got left.
I'm still here.
We're going to pause now for a few minutes.
I gotta go.
Brief intermission.
All right, so the reason we are gathered here today is to talk about Game of Thrones, and we're gonna have some nerd talk around it. I'm not gonna be able to stop these three. The person who was here earlier goes, I just they all seem to know each other, and I just don't know anybody, and I go, they've never met. They're just really geeking out over Game of Thrones.
No, I think she's like, oh, I thought you were going to talk about politics. You're going to geek out over Game of Thrones. See ya.
Yeah, right. Yeah, Jess, you were like, please don't invite me if you're going to talk about politics. I just want to talk about dragons.
No, when I said I was coming on here, my boyfriend was like, you're going to talk politics? I go, Lord, no. We're talking Game of Thrones. He goes, okay, that makes more sense.
All right, so let's start with our general impressions of this episode. Let's just say the whole story arc and the last episode specifically. I'm not going to give you a spoiler alert, because if you're stupid enough to start listening to a podcast that's got Game of Thrones in the title 2 days after the finale, then you know what you're going to get. So you don't get a spoiler alert. That's dumb.
I think
Grow
that
up.
was actually a spoiler alert than you just gave.
It's called broadcasting. Look it up, Jess.
Sorry, dear leader.
Thank you.
Wow, she's down with the terms.
Yes, she's been around.
I can't escape him talking about how he's the leader and wall this, wall that.
Yep.
No, I'm in.
Roam around the office talking about libertarianism. I'm the most popular guy there.
He's spreading joy and wisdom.
When I walk down the hall, doors shut. Oh, God. How many vaccinations did he have? All right, so let's...
Not enough.
Right. So let's talk about just what did you think of the ending of the show and the story arc as a whole? Let's start with Todd Singer.
Yeah, I wasn't thrilled. Like, this is not a hot take. A lot of people think that the last 2 seasons feel rushed. I thought they could have done a lot more fleshing out. And in the last episode, we got the big scene with Danny and Aegon, John.
That's another thing. Normally we stop and try to catch the newbies up. We're just gonna be full nerd.
Yeah,
We're not,
there you go.
But nobody knows who Aegon is. But Jon Snow it up if you can. Just so those who are tangentially kind of following.
Understood. So we get that scene, and then they still have 40 minutes left of airtime. But that really wasn't enough to me. Didn't love the ending. Would have probably preferred something different, but there were some good parts too. And I talked about pre-show how I liked how, Bronn is now master of coin, whereas Peter Baelish was master of coin, and Peter Baelish got his information through the brothels, so he ran the brothels. And of course, Bronn, his first priority is let's rebuild the brothels.
Right.
Different reason for wanting to do that, but still, that was, I think, a nice scene.
Right. Jessica?
The last episode, I think most people were complaining. The whole season was just so rushed.
Yeah.
Because they could have made that at least a season or 2 alone. The last episode should have been 2 or 3 episodes. And I think had it been spaced out like, the past seasons, I would have been like, this is great. I didn't see where it was going. But instead of having witty dialogue and suspense, it was like, this happened, next scene, this happens, next scene. Everything was just back to back.
Mm-hmm.
So I was like, crap. But with where they went with it, I mean, I was okay with that. At first, I'm like, really? Can I say literally who gets the throne?
Yes.
Bran ends up being on the Iron Throne at the end. And Bran
the Broken.
I wanted Jon Snow or
Right.
Daenerys, one of those two. But then with Dany turning Mad
s-
Queen, it was
not a secondary character who wasn't even in one of the seasons.
but silly me, because if you thought this was a happy ending, you've been mistaken, a la Ramsay Bolton. So I was okay with it being Bran for the reasoning that Tyrion gives. But Jon Snow just getting sent back to the north, I'm like, that's cool. I mean, he belongs up there. He can hang out with the wildling women.
Right.
Get away from the drama since, Dany's gone. But overall, I love the show. The last season was just rushed so much. It was like...
Yeah.
So as a fan, I guess it's easy to complain because you want more.
Do we have any idea why this season was so rushed?
I don't know.
Is it an artistic choice?
We
or?
think the showrunners, Benioff and Weiss, were ready to be done. What I've heard is that HBO gave them license to keep going and gave them the budget, but they had decided that they were ready to move on.
Yeah, I think they're ready to work on the new Star Wars.
Star
They're probably
Wars.
writing a storyline instead of Game of Thrones. And
Right.
Ran out of...
The good news is, there's no possible issue with upsetting Star Wars fans if they go in the wrong direction.
Right. Well, and that's it.
they're
Really
already
felt
upset.
to me watching this season, especially this last episode, like C+ homework. You were, you can kind of tell when somebody's just not focused on something, and it really felt like they just didn't pay attention to the details. And there's little things like in one of the biggest budget shows of all time, like coffee cups and water bottles in the scenes, like that. Those little attention to detail things, you just sort of go, I don't get why this was so. Why did they mess this part of it up so bad?
like senioritis in the back end.
Yes.
But the acting was phenomenal.
Yeah.
All the characters I thought did so great. Oh, kitty cat, hello.
If Peter Dinklage doesn't win Best Actor in something, I will be amazed. I mean, I thought the last 3 episodes have been his best acting.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
Okay, but I have a problem with his ending too.
yeah.
So I think George R.R. Martin, the author of the books, is on record as saying that he identifies with Tyrion the most of all the characters.
Right.
And the ending to me seemed almost like a Mary Sue type thing. Like, I'm going to write a happy ending for my character,
Mm.
even though it's hard to see how he would have been in that position. with the other dynamics that were in play.
Yeah. Well, I'll get to Tyrion in my wrap up because I don't totally agree. For those of you who don't know, Tyrion, the man short of stature, ends up being the hand of the king. Yes, go ahead, Jessica.
Did you say that? I love your cat.
Mittens?
Did you say that George R. R. Martin, he's all about, being circular and bringing everything back, and so
That was
said
Chris.
I did,
Chris
yeah.
said that.
I did.
One
It
of the
was an
Chris's
article.
said
It was
that.
an article that I read. Yeah.
So then maybe that's like just another one of those characters. Let's bring him back to where they kind of started because
Yep.
he's so good at the game itself, being involved. Whether he wants to continue doing it, it's like, nope, you have to do this. This is your destiny.
And just like Jamie.
Well, I mean, you really look at it, and Tyrion ended up positioning himself to be the de facto ruler of the kingdom. I mean, he put in position to be the king, the weakest person in the game, the person with the least interest in it, who shows up to his first council meeting and just kind of shrugs, and then like, I'm going to go smoke weed now, and like backs away, and then
You underestimate Bran, sir. He's the mastermind behind the entire story.
we'll get to you in a moment, but that was the moment when I was like, this is brilliant, because doesn't matter what choice Jon Snow ever made, the wheel was going to continue. Power was going to be exercised in the same way it's always been exercised. A Tyrion who's the most clever will position himself to be in power and then bring his friends along. So what was your impressions, Chris Gault? It's your turn.
So it sounds like we
Just
have
starting
between the
out-
three of you.
Just hold on. Just starting out smug. You breathe and it's smug. Go ahead.
Between the three of you, it sounds like there's a consensus that you would all rewrite it in your own way, and that's fine.
This episode was kind of like, I'd say the last season, but the ending as a whole was like coming on SSRIs, on antidepressants. It's still nice, but it's not great. That's how I'd put it. It's just sort of, meh.
And that's why I absolutely love the ending.
Of course,
Is
yeah.
because everyone here doesn't like it, or doesn't like aspects of it at least. And I think that that's a great storytelling, to have characters not do what they would normally do in a fairy tale type world like that. Like Jamie's fall was probably my favorite part, and which when I'm reading it seems like that's most people's least favorite part.
Jamie basically going back to Cersei and dying.
Because that's what his whole story was. He only ever loved one person in his whole life.
Right.
And when he was with Brienne, you could see it in his face the whole time he was there that it wasn't the same for him. It wasn't like his true love, his sister. But it is what it is. But I loved that he fell back to his addiction, and it was real. It was a real moment for a character that I don't feel like you get in very many shows. It was almost like kind of like Walter White in Breaking Bad's a good character that you see break,
I agree.
And-
I agree with you about Jamie. I agree that he's the most realistic person because at the end of the day, we are all like people, no matter how hard they try to change their spots, no matter how hard they try to be noble and do the right thing, like you always eventually kind of fall back into some of those worst patterns and then have to keep fighting those demons.
Yeah.
I think he was a very conflicted character, and I think that he had a really good story arc.
Yeah, and then with Tyrion saving his life, in the camp, I think that was a really great moment for Tyrion because he left there and he knew that was the end of his life. Like he gave up his life for his brother.
Yeah.
And eventually that would come back to him, and that's why when they showed him in the rubble, like someone in my viewing party said, "Oh, why are they showing that?" And I was like, "Yeah, but they're showing this for
I don't know, maybe
Tyrion."
they're top 5 characters, like
Well, yeah, and on-screen death, I guess, because they kind of flashed away. And you don't want that as a loose end,
Right.
thinking Cersei's still alive somewhere in the theory boards.
right.
Which it was, so good call that they
Yeah.
showed that.
Yeah.
But you said Jamie never loved any other person. But
Yeah.
I think it's pretty clear he loved Tyrion. I mean, he
Oh.
several times
Okay.
put himself on the line for his brother.
Yeah.
Convinced Tywin to not execute him.
Yeah.
He helped him escape in other places. Like,
You're right.
and of course Tyrion references that. Like, I wouldn't even be.
I think that scene.
alive
I
without
think that
you.
scene of Tyrion saying goodbye to Jamie was one of the best scenes in the whole show. I thought
Yeah.
it was super touching and well acted by Peter Dinklage.
And I think there were a lot of those moments in the season that I think people will start to realize when we all rewatch it again, like we have the first 5 or 6 seasons. We've all watched it like 5 or 6 times, I'm sure. And once we watch this one a few more times, we'll start to like some of those moments a little bit more and start to understand some of those holes. Because I don't know about you guys, but like if it was season 6 right now and I went back for a rewatch, there are things in those seasons that I would notice that I did not notice. So every single rewatch, I would learn more things and connections with those characters.
Yeah,
And that
like-
will happen in this new season. It's
Like,
the exact
for example,
same.
Daenerys at one point tells Varys flat out, "I will burn you alive if you betray
Yeah.
me."
Well,
Yeah.
wasn't there a dream sequence of her walking into the throne room in snow?
She's in the house of the
Undying.
Undying.
With
Yeah.
the warlock.
And at
She
first,
burns them with the little
it's
baby
like,
dragons.
is it snow? And then you're like, oh no, it's ash. But then
Yep.
it really did. They did bring winter
Yep.
to King's Landing, so I guess it was snow. But she never touched it.
It was
in the
kind of
dream.
both.
Right.
Snow
So
and
as soon
ash.
as she gets close to the throne, and then she ends up going to what looks like north of the wall, and she sees Khal Drogo and her baby. They
Right.
didn't make it, but apparently that's her going into the afterlife to join them.
Mhm.
So I guess the sun rising in the east, setting in the west, or
Yeah.
what was it? No, sun rises in the west and sets in the east.
Mhm.
How does the sun actually do it? It's the opposite of how the real sun
Starts
does it.
in the east and ends in the west.
This is
Backwards.
easy
It's
to remember.
backwards
You
there.
just watched the great '80s movie, The Muppet movie, and the song says, "Hey, I've never seen the sun come out in the west." And that's how you remember. You may be too young for that movie.
Yeah, I know.
Just get a map.
Sorry, just look out my window.
The map. How does the map help with the
Yeah,
sunset?
but besides Jamie and Tyrion, I really liked all the Starks endings. All 3 of them. They're all 4 of them. They're all kings and queens in their own regards. They all went in their own ways. They all get to live lives that they chose. Sansa wanted to be queen since day one.
Mhm.
That's what all she was saying the whole time. And Arya has said earlier in the series that she wanted to sail west and explore. And Bran didn't vocalize what he wanted, but he wanted to be king, or he knew that he was going to be king, at least as he said in that last episode.
Knowing and wanting are two different things. Why do you think he wanted it? Is there anything that leads you or any of you to believe that he wanted to be king, or he was
No,
just
he
sort
said he said that he does not want.
of he just
It's just a
accepts?
necessary thing,
Right.
Mhm. And then Jon is also the king beyond the wall. So I think they all got their great endings. That's the only place Jon really belonged, was when he was north of the wall with Ygritte, which was some of my favorite times.
When
in
they were
Thrones.
walking out, I really wanted to see a White Walker. I was really hoping like. I'd love that suspense of that's what I thought was going to happen as they're walking kind of all the parading north, and they'd see the Night King or a White Walker. I was like, oh, please,
we
please.
missed one.
So you want more White Walkers?
I just a continuation.
That's
of
what they're gonna
everything.
do.
Yeah.
The new series they're gonna do is called The Long Night.
Oh, is it?
And it's the prequel for the original
What
time
are
the White Walkers came.
what are the spinoffs?
That's the one they're gonna do.
Okay,
Right.
just
That-
that one.
I mean,
Children-
no.
Children of the
George
Forest,
R.
I
Martin.
assume?
George R. Martin is committed to up to 5, to helping write up to 5.
He's laughing the whole time.
5
Yeah, I'll
what?
help you with
5
5.
spin-off
Actually, you get
series.
one book out that's been waiting
5
10
new
years.
series,
Yeah.
spin-off series.
Not for nothing, but as a man of larger carriage, can we get you to finish the book series before you know?
Yeah,
like,
I know. That's
Right.
like,
let's
No.
hit the treadmill and
He's
eat a
cashing
salad.
in
I don't think he'll write another book.
because
As he hasn't finished. He's got
Winds
like
of
what?
Winter is just out there chilling, right?
Right. He's got
Huh.
what? 2 more to finish.
well, he
with?
was like, some people didn't like the ending. I might just blame it
James
on D&D and not put out my books so they don't hate me.
Right. D&D being the showrunners,
Right,
the
sorry.
guys that basically were in charge, like the David Chase, the who's the Sopranos guy, or Dick Wolf for Law and Order.
Right.
So my impressions, knowing that now that I know that they're going to do spinoffs, things make sense. Like you're going to send Jon north, you're going to send Arya out west, to find new lands, and she's a colonialist. That stuff makes sense if you're doing spinoffs, but from a classic story point, like if you ever read The Hero's Journey, I think it's The Hero's Journey by Joseph Campbell, where basically the general story arc, it's very influential on George Lucas and Star Wars. You take somebody who's in a low rank, somebody who's kind of poor or young or an upstart, they feel an injustice in the world. They meet a guide who helps them kind of discover their true power, and then the hero defeats the evil empire with the help of the guide. And there's trials and tribulations along the way, and usually a romantic interest. And like that's the classic storytelling formula that pretty much everything Joseph Campbell just kind of identified through all of mythology and history and all of our literature, like these main themes. There's another guy, the 7 basic plots, where he identifies like the 7 basic plots that all stories kind of follow. And so there's some stuff in this where there's discord between classic storytelling and the way that this wrapped up. You have Jon Snow, who is resurrected, who is the main character of the story, who is, raised from the dead. He defeats the Battle of the Bastards. He like has all these huge moments, and then he just becomes sort of this silent, neutered person in the last episode, especially.
Whoa! But that's after he saves potentially millions of people.
Mm-hmm.
The entire world, the known world.
Maybe. So yes, there is that scene, but at the end
Tyrion,
of the,
he at least saves Tyrion.
he's going, but she's my queen. Like you just saw her nuke an entire town of 1 million people. Like she's still your queen. You should be
Her.
reacting like if you're a man of honor, you'd go like Ned Stark. You'd go the way of Tyrion and Varys, and you'd stop her, which he ultimately did. But he had conflict over it. It was just sort of
Love is the death of duty.
But that whole thing was just sort of crammed. It was just odd, and it didn't
Aemon
fit
said
right.
that.
Like, did
Aemon
it feel
said that.
rushed?
Not just rushed, but just like
How many times can you guys say rushed in this
just
podcast?
bad storytelling.
2000.
I'm
Oh,
from
Wow.
Rushville.
Bad
Huh?
storytelling because it subverted your expectations. It was
No,
bad.
because it's bad storytelling.
What was bad about it? What part of the story was bad?
That particular,
Besides that, you disagreed with the outcome.
the fact that the whole show is about the North,
Daenerys Targaryen.
the Northmen specifically.
Oh, it's about the Northmen.
and the Stark. Would you shut up? Thank you.
Oh no.
This
Am I
story-
witnessing
this
the
story
beginning
is
of the
just-
end here?
This story is much larger than one character or one town.
But
or
when
one
you're
area.
talking about the Stark's story arc, you're talking about men who just do the right thing no matter the cost, and then they're men of honor, and then you get to the last episode, and he completely betrays that by waffling on whether or not he should stop Daenerys Targaryen, we just witnessed one of the great tyrannical scenes of all of television history. Like it's like watching.
And you didn't want any
Nuremberg.
conflict in his mind about to stab the woman that he loved. You didn't want any conflict
because
there?
he knew he had to kill her. The only way to stop her would be to kill her.
Yeah,
Right.
And he was the only one that could, and that's what sucked.
That's
as opposed to just
but
having
you
a
have that-
conversation
you
with
wouldn't
her.
have
do
that
you guys,
conflict?
do you guys, from the acting, from the storytelling, do you guys? There are two things that are really missing around Daenerys and Jon in this season, in my mind. First is the deterioration of Daenerys into a madman. The most that we really get are some like weird, pensive. It looked like she had diarrhea that she was holding in her face and made this angry face, and then she just became crazy. There was never any like dialogue around her being crazy. It was just weird faces. And then second was the love interest. It's like, is he in love? Because every time she's tried to kiss him, he's pulled away from her, and now he's wrestling with whether or not he loves her or not. It just
Whoa.
didn't make any sense.
Because he found out she was his auntie. He's
Right.
like, auntie, I don't want to make out with you anymore. It's kind of weird. I know
Thank
you
you.
grew up that way, where you all married your sister wife. You know, Aegon with his sister wives,
doesn't-
conquering Westeros and
I'm
whatnot.
just saying, if I find out last week that she's my first cousin and this week that she's a genocidal maniac, my love isn't as strong.
Right.
I'm not Otis Redding over here.
So see, this is why it's beautiful, because she was a suicidal maniac the entire time. She was just killing people that were bad. She loved burning the Dothraki villages down. She loved conquering those cities. She loved killing the dead.
The slave
She loved
masters.
it all. She loved she was fire and blood the entire show, but she never killed the good people until the end.
So
Right.
that's
she
why
did the exact same thing she'd done to all the other villages.
Right.
And lazy writing, kind of, to speed things up. That's why they put Tyrion in the last episode to basically explain that to people that might have
Right.
a problem with her all of a sudden flipping to Mad Queen. He's like, no, it's been there the whole time. Let me tell you.
Exactly right. And what happened with Varys in the notes that he sent around to all the kingdoms, and like you had to see a meme to notice that he was trying to poison her. Like they're just like these little sloppy things that you go, I don't get why Jon Snow gets neutered from a story perspective, and then he's bargained over, even though he's the rightful king of the Seven Kingdoms. He gets bargained over, and then the Unsullied leave, and then his brother, who's king, and his sister, who's North King, they don't go, hey, well, now that they're gone, that deal's off. You can do whatever you want. You can stay here if you'd like. They have this weird tortured scene on the dock where they all see the ships going away, and they're like, yeah, but you still have to go not fuck some chicks at the wall. Like, sorry, bro. Like, I know you did a lot for us. You did a lot. Like, it just, some of it didn't make sense. And then Arya never gets any kind of glory for killing the Night King. What scene did we see her get crowned?
They toasted her at Winterfell.
Oh,
They did.
okay.
To the hero
She wasn't
of
there.
Winterfell.
We could go to
Right.
Shallow's Antique Restaurant right now and toast you. Like,
I would like that. You should do that, please.
all right, fine.
Take pictures.
Great chips.
So there was
So you say that doesn't make sense
which part?
that John was sent to the Castle Black
Yes, if you can
to join the
explain,
Night's Watch.
if
I
you
can.
explain to me,
I can.
other than we need to cash out on a spinoff series.
So
Like Arya's ending made complete sense. Sansa, complete sense. Daenerys, complete sense. Jon Snow, I don't get what they were doing with Jon
He's
Snow.
back to where he started too.
He was the Christ-like figure throughout
He's
this
where
whole
he's
thing,
supposed to
and
be,
then
like I
he's not.
said.
He's just flops at the end.
He was sent to join the Night's Watch.
Mm-hmm.
There is no Night's Watch, Chris Spangle.
Okay.
So when Tyrion said that, there should have been a big wink.
Ah. Okay.
Hey,
All right.
you go join your buddies up there at the wall. You have a whole entire other queen in between us and you.
Right.
You do what you want. There's no more White Walker threat. There's no more wildling threat, which was what the wall was there for.
Mm-hmm.
It was perfect.
All right. I can see that.
Thank
you get to go live. All right. I can buy that.
I thought he was just sent to go. He was just the Lord Commander now of the Night's Watch, whatever that was, to
Right.
take in the people of the 7 or 6 kingdoms in the north that maybe they break the law or they're the outcasts of their family, like your Samwells.
That's why they shut. That's why he walked out the gate.
Well, I
in
thought-
spring, and
but I
it
thought
shut
he was-
behind him, and he was walking with the wildlings out because
But-
he's not staying at Castle Black. He's
I know,
free.
but I thought he was going Gault. That's why part of why I like the ending. You've ruined the only part of his ending that I liked is that a character went Gault and said, "I'm walking away from the world that you nuts have created, and I'm going Gault in the north."
I know that's why I loved it.
Right. And you ruined that for me now.
No, it's great. It's still true.
Here's what I will say, and this
Grey
is
Worm doesn't know that. Grey Worm thinks he's
well,
shackled up there,
Grey
and
Worm's
training
going to the beach.
criminals.
So here's what I really did like about it. I thought that the scene with Daenerys was the great thing about the series as a whole is it really illustrates for us political power. It really kind of shows you the absurdity of political power and the absurdity of trying to rule over others and how it corrupts people wholly, even decent people that you think like Daenerys. You think she's a decent person. She's going to save everyone. She's going to break the wheel. But she just turns out to be another dictator who's going to destroy the world. And I thought that scene, the taking her from a person that you're really rooting for to a person that you despise by the end was a great example of how power completely corrupts both the person who is seeking power and also how many innocent people it hurts in the process. And I thought that the dragon seeing the throne as the thing that killed Daenerys, while being a bit obvious, was very apropos and a really good ending to that entire arc. And I think one that we can, as libertarians, really apply to how we view political power. I mean, have you thought about it in that?
I kind of just thought Drogon was just kind of breathing fire in general, which ended up in a result
Right.
melting the throne, but because he wasn't necessarily aiming right at it, he was just like screaming.
Yeah.
But in the result of it, melting it down.
Well, he wasn't
So
going to kill
nobody
the
gets it.
last Targaryen.
I know, but I really did want Drogon to kind of breathe fire at Jon and be like, "Oh, look, he's unburnt." What?
Right.
And then he just started to worship him, kind of.
Right.
And then he'll be like, "Go away! I gave up Ghost. I can't hang out with you."
Yeah.
And then they all go live in the north together.
I mean, what did
Sorry.
you think about that arc?
Well, couple things. One, while the Starks have been portrayed as honorable throughout the series, they've also been portrayed as, how do I put this delicately, stupid. So my first question is, how did they find out that John put a knife through her heart? Like, why shouldn't he have
Thank
just
you.
cut his arm and said, the dragon came in, freaked out, she flew off, I don't know where they went, and I got cut.
Exactly. You were waiting for Grey Worm to run in
I mean,
and
is
arrest
it possible
him.
John just said, "Oh yeah, I killed her"?
Nobody.
It's
heard-
possible because
He
that's the
did.
kind of person that he
He's
is.
honorable. He would tell the truth.
I wouldn't put it past him.
I mean, the only explanation that you don't get is Jon Snow told on himself, which is so stupid. He could have walked out and been like, "I'm the king." He could have climbed on that dragon, and then he could have killed the Unsullied. He could have killed and said Daenerys Targaryen was a traitor. I'm saving it, and then. Or taken the dragon to fight the Unsullied with his sisters and all the Northmen and everybody else. And instead, you get Tyrion waking up in a prison 3 weeks later, and Jon's a prisoner for what
It is
reason?
stupid, but it's not out of character.
Well,
Because he could be.
I get
he
it.
could be.
I
he
get
is
it.
that stupid.
Just like Ned,
He
I
knows
have
nothing.
this letter.
You know.
Yeah, right.
What letter? It's like, dang, good one, Cersei.
Right. So I
I didn't
want
think
to.
about that.
I
Eliminated
referenced
it.
real quick before we started, how I would have rewritten the ending, and mine would have been that, Drogon kind of bends down toward John. John touches his snout and climbs up on him and says,
Right.
"I'm the last Targaryen, and
Look at me.
I am
I'm
a
the
dragon."
captain. I'm the captain of the ship.
Right, and the dragon
he
recognizes him as
flew
a,
it to
as
the
a
wall.
Targaryen. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, that would have been pretty good.
but they
if
didn't
he left
consult
on
me,
his own
sadly.
terms
Yeah.
instead of being forced to leave.
I just would have liked
I
to
would've
seen
liked
that
that.
episode, though, of the conflict, of them finding John, how he does it. That's, again, that right there is an entire episode. Or if we could just jump cut,
It's a
grow
whole
a beard,
book that now
bam.
you get to read all the books and you get all the thrones you've ever wanted.
He's not gonna make
Hopefully.
it. Let's be honest.
What?
He's too busy. He's.
But I mean, she's still got some books to read.
you do.
So Cato actually did an entire breakdown, I think maybe yesterday, about this is 2017. Looks like Cato did. I'll put it in the show notes and the link to the Guardian article that I pulled this from. But one of the guys in the panel discussion on the Power and Game of Thrones said there's a lot of talk about breaking the wheel, but there's really little analysis of what the wheel is made of, what it would take to break it, and what you would build in its place. And another guy agreed. It seems like Daenerys' thinking about what the system will be like hasn't progressed beyond, I will be on the throne and I will not be a bad person like my father was, like Cersei is, like these other people are. But he felt that our own world was not immune to that sort of thinking. You can see it in even today liberal democratic societies where candidates promise us things like, I will bring you change you can believe in, or you give me power, I can only do it, I'll solve your problems. I only can do it if you let me solve your problems. Excuse me. That's a better and easier campaign strategy than I will build some good institutions. That doesn't fit into your 30-second ad very well. And that's very true. And so you sort of look at it, and I don't think a lot of us sit and examine what it takes to build political power. And I think libertarians especially, I look at libertarians and I think, Daenerys doesn't think about what will it take to replace the wheel. Libertarians spend so much time talking about hating government, and they focus solely on I heard Michael Malice talk about his new book on Glenn Beck this past week, and it was just a really great conversation that Malice had. You can find it on Beck's SoundCloud, where he talked about libertarians and the right in general